Welcome back, this is CerealSnax. Today I'm looking at a game called Legend of Grimrock. And I made a video about this game, I think one of my first videos I made on my old channel, Rage Sensor. So I'd like to revisit it just because it was my first video and I think that I wanted, it'd be nice just to take another look at the game. Back then I was just kind of playing around and not really, reviewing the game or giving my first impressions. So I'm going to do that here. Now, of course, it's a pretty simplistic game. If you haven't heard of it before, it harkens back to the old games that came out in the 90s. One of the games that it really reminds me of is Lands of Lore, which I believe had Patrick Stewart as the narrator in the beginning, cinematic. I guess back then it wasn't really much of a cinematic, but so that was a neat game and very simplistic dungeon crawlers. And you'll see here in a second. Now, what I'm going to do is actually, I'm not going to create my own characters. I'm going to let the game do it for me. You can actually choose to create your own characters and you can customize them and do all that stuff. I'm just going to let the game do it for me because it's not a real special thing to look at particularly. But the other thing you can do is old school mode, which reminds me of those old games where this turns off mapping in the game. And in those old games, a lot of times you didn't have a map. You actually had to have a stack of graph paper and you'd have to draw it out yourself. I remember doing that with Lands of Lore. So I'm not going to do that though either. I want to be able to see the map. I'm going to apply here. We've got a little cinematic here. They drop you off on this Mount Grimrock, which is a prison that they drop you off at the top of the prison, basically, and then the goal is to get all the way down, and very few people actually make it, but if you do make it, then you're a free man. So kind of a standard storyline, but I like it. It harkens back to those old games. So you can see the text here. Press any key. So a little airship dropping off the prisoners. So here's you as the little prisoners. Throughout the game you see these two statues. You can see them standing there. I don't know what they represent exactly, but kind of neat, the style of the game. I like the little airship they have. So they're about ready to cast us into the hole. Oops, I skipped through that text, but unimportant. The goal is that we're criminals. We did something to upset somebody, and so they're throwing us into a pit. So everyone before them has perished in the guts of the mountain, but you will be able to lead them through the dark into freedom that awaits them at the base of Mount Grimrock. I don't know. I'm going to try. But, so, pretty straightforward storyline. There's no cinematic. No, this is an indie game, and I really like to tout these indie games because I think they're so well done for the price that you end up paying for them. It doesn't have a lot of the flash sometimes, but you don't really need that. So here you are in the first dungeon. You can see there's a lone torch there. And when you turn a full square. You can see it's not like a fluid. You can do a fluid turn if you want, but you always end back at like north, south, east, or west, essentially. So you can do it like this with a mouse, and it's a kind of a smooth turn, but you still rotate back to that square. And you're in this dungeon, right? So the goal is to get out of here. And there's puzzles. So it's not only like it's an exploration game, but there's puzzles and there's also some fighting. So it's got all those things. Kind of look around, although there's not much to see. You can't really, it's not a free roam necessarily like Skyrim, although the textures are just as good. You can see the pit that we fell down out of. So I'm going to go around here and let's see. I think there's a secret right here at the beginning. And I always have trouble finding it. Perhaps there isn't. Or maybe it's in one of these halls. Regardless, there is a secret right as you start. Here we go. So you can see there was a little empty rock on the wall there, a little broken rock, and you push it and it opens this door. And there's that statue I'm talking about. It almost looks like Cthulhu, one of the old ones, gods, kind of with his little tentacles sticking out of his mouth. So that's interesting. So you can pick stuff up. We got some lurker boots. And I'll show you the inventory here. Here's the basic inventory, just like those old games. And you just put the boots on, and of course it gives you your stats: evasion +5, a skilled thief. See, I should probably put it on my thief character, being that they're evasive boots, but at this point in time it's not too important. So these are the pre-made characters. You can see this guy is Kontar Stone Skull, and he is a human fighter, level 1, has all his stats here, his skills. We got athletics, armors, axes, maces, swords. So it's got all the detail that you would expect in a role-playing game like this. So that's appealing to me. I like to be able to mess with all those stats. I've also got Mork, which is my Minotaur. And it's neat that they give you a Minotaur because you're in a maze. It makes sense, I guess, you'd have a Minotaur if you're familiar with the Minotaur tale. But he's a Minotaur fighter, so he's got different stats a little bit just because he's a Minotaur. He's skilled in maces currently. So, and of course we have a mage in the back named Sanksaron, and then our thief Yenica Whitefeather. So, and I'll kind of show you what these hands represent. Basically, you have no equipment when you start, so you have to use your hands. You can see that I got a shuriken off the ground, and I can give it to the woman, and she can actually throw it. And I'll show you how that works here in a second. So, pretty straightforward game. I think right now on Steam, because of the Steam Summer Sale, it's actually, I want to say $5 for the game, which, and it doesn't go above 10 ever. So, it goes on sale regularly just because it's, it's an indie game. But for $5, it surpasses, I would say, many of the, AAA titles that come out from EA and those sort of companies. It has tons of value. I would say the entire playthrough probably takes 15 or 16 hours, I guess, if you take your time with it, which is not huge, but for $5 it's pretty good. And if you saw in the beginning, I picked the map Grimrock, and so presumably people will be coming out with other maps. So choose your fate, perish in this cell, or pick up the torch. So the cool thing about this too is you pick up a torch and it goes dark. I'm going to put the torch in the hand of the Minotaur. Now you can see, now I'm carrying the light around and it follows me as I walk. So let me go down this hallway a little bit and kind of show you what this is all about. Alright, so far we haven't encountered any enemies, and actually you don't for a little bit here, so just bear with me. I tend to take all the torches, and actually they do burn out, so it's good to not use them all if you don't have to. So just typical gate, you pull the chain. I haven't had any secrets yet. I'm probably, at some point I'll probably start passing secrets, and those of you who have maybe played the game will probably be laughing. But regardless, I'm just going to keep going here. We got a cudgel, which I will give to my Minotaur, put the torch in the other hand. In fact, the wizard will probably hold the torches for now. I don't know that he can really do a whole lot yet, so I'll give him the torches. Open this gate here. So I was talking about Lands of Lore and all those games. That was one thing I remember spending hours in games like that. And Lands of Lore is just one that comes to mind, but there were a bunch of others, even ones made by companies I've never heard of since or before then. And I just remember having the save game feature and just over and over again saving the game and going back and trying to figure out all the secrets and that sort of thing. So they're just fun. You always are looking to pick something up in the next corner, and what's the next puzzle you're going to encounter, and all that sort of thing. So here's the key. One thing I like to do is pick up the key and carry it with me because it's bound to be a door. And what invariably happens is there isn't a door, and then I end up having to drop the key like this. And picking up a rock for the thief. So let's see. And here's the door. So let's go back in her inventory, and you just put it on the door, and there you go. So very straightforward. The other thing they've got in this game, they've got a food mechanic. So you pick up food. You just got to make sure you keep your guys fed, or they will suffer because of that. I will show you the spell casting here in a second, if we can just encounter an enemy. So here's another door with a key that I don't have yet. Let's see, what does this say? Loose rock. So another loose rock. And another secret room. So let's check it out here. We got another key. Alright. Let's go back. Let's get this torch while we're at it. Oh, did I already? Oh, that was the one I just did? Okay, yeah. So I'm losing my mind now too. Let's go back again and open this gate. Perhaps I can show you a battle, and then I can kind of give my impression. So my impression of this game is that it's worth to pick up. I mean, $5 you can't really lose for a game like this, especially with the gameplay. And if you look online, you'll see, and here we go, here's a snail. You'll see that a lot of people say good things about it. So here's how the combat works. It's not a like action-based aiming type combat. So you don't have to worry about being good at aiming. You just have to be good at clicking down here to where you want to attack. So, for example, here's the wizard, and if you right-click on his hand, you get a list of spells, and eventually you'll figure out what they are. I believe his first spell is fire, and it's this first rune right here. So let's just try it. Yeah. So, discovered new spell, Fire Burst. So I'm too far away to have done any damage, but he resumes it quickly. And then, of course, with her, to throw things, you just right-click. So, throw this shuriken down the hall at that snail. This massive, crazy snail. Probably a racing snail from the Neverending Story, I don't know. And then these guys, since they don't have any weapons, they just hit with their hands. Now, the people in the back can't do anything unless they have missile weapons. So, because they're in the back row. So, the way that games like this work is that you have to be either in the front row to do damage, or you have to have a ranged attack, which the wizard does, and she did until I threw him. So, let's pick up the small slice of snail, which we will eat if we need it later. So, it's probably delicious, small snail, but we got a rock. So that was the first enemy. Kind of give you an idea of what the combat is all about. Put these pants on the Minotaur. You gotta have pants on your Minotaur, and then we'll give the warrior a dagger for now, even though he's not really adept at daggers yet, and these boots of protection. So that's pretty much it. Now there are other puzzles and there's other things to be seen in the game, but in general, this is kind of what the game is all about, and not much varies. So if you like this sort of game, then it's great. And if you don't like traversing amongst dungeons that all look relatively similar, then you probably won't enjoy it too much. I find the enemies definitely get a little harder, and there definitely gets to be some strategy. It's not a game where you just click a button and you win. So there is a little strategy involved. It's slightly difficult, especially in the beginning, because you don't have a lot of your stuff. Once you start to get equipped with items and weapons, it becomes a little bit easier. And once you kind of figure it out, too, it gets easier. So I think that's pretty much it for what I have to talk about Legend of Grimrock. I hope you enjoyed watching my, I guess it's more of a review than a first impressions because I've played so much of it, but it's definitely worth getting into. There's definitely twists and turns. The storyline definitely gets deeper as the deeper you go in Grimrock. So I was very pleased with how it turned out, and I had a lot of fun with it. It was well worth my $5. So pick it up in the Steam sale and enjoy.